One of the most important things as far as getting a lifelike look to an animal, any animal, a deer, a zebra, wildebeest, African lion, bear, coyote, whatever. I firmly believe glass eyes, the crystal of a glass eye, far surpasses anything that's made out of acrylic or any other kind of plastic. With that said, we switch over to my North American eyes. These little boxes are great for eye storage. I got them at Harbor Freight. One of the few things from Harbor Freight that really paid off to buy. So, with that said, let's go to the selection for whitetail deer eyes. When Tohican first came out with their eyes, the first eyes they came out with was the aspheric eye. Okay, now this eye boasted a ridge around the edge, and this ridge served a purpose. If you needed to make an adjustment to the eye, you could reach in with a pin or a sharp probe tool and be able to press the eye on either side to get it to sit correctly. These were introduced around the same time that paper forms were going out and foam forms were coming in. And that was the time when the original polyurethane foam forms, the eye sockets were just still a socket. And you needed to put clay in and level your eyes, but then you needed to be able to get the angles of the eyes yourself. Now this was the first of their compound lenses, as you can see here, I hope. This was the first of their compound lenses, okay? Again, the ridge was still around the edge for adjusting from the outside. They then came out with some other eyes. Of course, my favorites happened to be the 250 IQ. These were developed originally as a surgical implant for a thoroughbred racehorse. I know a little something about thoroughbred racehorses, and I know a little something about the structure of the eye, having had a course in veterinary medicine. These eyes, as far as I'm concerned, are the most anatomically accurate there are. There will be others who will argue that with me, but I just pay no attention. I know what I know. There are cheaper versions of these eyes being made right now. Don't be fooled, okay? Do not be fooled. They are not the same as Tohican. They are a direct ripoff from Tohican glass eyes. A direct ripoff. One of the first of the aspheric eyes to come out in an actual shape was this antelope eye. Beautiful for pronghorn antelope. And again, you can see the ridge around the edge for securing from the outside. The eyes I choose for my clients' mounts are still the 250 eyes that have the great forward look shape to them, where the rise of the lens is at the front. It slopes down towards the rear of the eye, and you have an actual accurate eye shape. The corneal bulge is precisely where it's supposed to be, toward the front. Yes, these are more expensive eyes, but I charge my clients a good price for their deer heads and all the other work I do, and for that they're going to get the best eyes on the market. Not the cheapest copies, but the originals. And glass, for me, is the only way to go. That being said, All right, you've seen my preference of eye choice. Now this is my preference for clay. This is Critter Clay, manufactured by the AV's Studio. This is the best clay, bar none. A lot of guys like to go cheap. They like to go to Hobby Lobby. I will never, ever patronize Hobby Lobby for what they do with their employees' health care. And that's basically deny it, especially the women. That's beside the point. That's as political as I'm going to get right now. The best eyes on the market with the best clay on the market. It's the only way to go. I will use this for ears and eyes. I was using Sally Dame's ear base for a while, which is, I guess, more or less based on the Joe Combs formula. But I've since switched over to the Critter Clay, and you will see why as we progress. All right, I'm going to open the pack of eyes. I just go under with a little hobby knife because it's convenient. It's right here. Peel the plastic away and push the eye out. I'm going to examine it for any flaws there might be in, caused by shipping, not by manufacturing. This eye looks good. Put a little light on it. Alrighty, let's check this out. Yeah, eye looks good. Don't see any chips or flaws or anything in it. Pupil looks nice. Clean paint on the back. We have a good eye. It's going to be a good project. Now, to begin, I will take a Phillips head screwdriver and puncture a series of little divots, little holes around the interior of the eye socket. This will allow the clay bed that's laid in the eye socket to have something to really adhere to. The clay will end up being pushed into these little holes. Now, something else I'd like to point out. There are some out there who advocate cutting a little V-notch out of the front of the eye socket. There's no need for that. There's no need for that. A good form has a slight V-notch sculpted into the eye socket where it belongs. Deepening this detail anymore is not going to improve the head form. Not at all. If you look at the skull, the eye socket of the skull, okay, it's essentially a round orbit, okay? At the front of this orbit, there is a bone located directly at the front corner. Right here. All right? Now, at the front of that bone, located in that area, the flesh comes down and actually sits on that. That is the front corner of the deer's eye. So when you're sculpting and you're using a skull, you take care to pay attention to these marker points. And you don't take a chisel and knock this little bone off when you sculpt. You go and move your clay, you connect your clay, I should say, from at least this bone around the socket of the eye. Okay? That is then built up with muscle tissue to the correct proportions as taken from your measurement chart and as seen on your eye castings and your death masks. That's why death masks are used in sculpting. Okay, so notching this front corner out on a head form is an exercise in futility. There's no reason to. It's already there. That notch, in other words, has already been sculpted into the head form. The modeling tools I use for setting and sculpting around my eyes are the ones that I showed earlier. Same as it always was. Same as it always was. The wide round and a narrow round of that end of the wooden tools, and the sort of spoon-shaped end of the metal, the stainless steel modeling tool. Okay, let's get this party started, shall we? Yes, let's! All right. I start by putting in a thin layer of clay into the eye socket. Like so. I'm pressing it into the little divots I made with the Phillips head screwdriver. Okay? I then take a little bit of clay and install it into the back of the eyes. Put a little more in. I want the clay to come up level with the rear of the eye. Okay, like so. Now I'm going to take my handy dandy headlight, put it on, put it over my big fat head, turn it on to the brightest light it's got. And this will help me set the pupil in its proper seating, its proper angle. I want the pupil to match the level of the eyes as fixed with the lines determined by using the bubble level. Press the eye down in tight, close contact with the clay at the back. Make sure you keep a tight grip on it so it doesn't fall out of the eye socket. It shouldn't with enough clay in the back. But now I'm going to check with the flashlight my pupil level. Level looks correct from the side. I'll go around and check it after I secure it a little bit with some clay at the bottom and a little bit of clay at the top. Just want to keep the eye from falling onto the floor and shattering. I buy plenty after the season is done. Doesn't mean I want to waste any. Now what I can see by looking at the front, I need to raise the rear edge of the eye just a little bit, just to reduce the amount of white showing at the front. This eye, by the way, this is a 32 millimeter 250 IQ. I just want to raise that ever so slightly, putting some clay in behind the eye. And now I will press the eye back down. And that gives me a little better appearance, I think, for what I'm shooting for. Okay. This deer could have probably have gone with a 30 millimeter, but I like to go with the 32s as I can bring the clay down and cover all of the white. A 30 millimeter would sit a little looser in the eye socket and not would perhaps have a little too much white showing. Okay, it took about a couple, 3, maybe 5 minutes to get the eyes evenly set on both sides, but now they are set. Now I proceed to model the eyelids. Now, to begin, I grab a big chunk of the critter clay, roll it up into a ball. This ball is then cut in half. I use a cartilage knife. The ball is cut in half. Then it's cut into what I call odd quarter. And I'll show that in just a minute. No sense watching me actually cut the stuff. It's cut into a size like so. All right, the smaller of the two halves is what will be rolled out for the lower lid. I then take that little bit of clay, roll out a worm. Most likely not all of it will be used either. I start with the lower lid, like so. Press the one narrow end of the worm into the front corner, bring the rear up about the halfway point, tear it off. I then like to smooth it to the surface of the form. I'm not worried about securing a shape just yet. I will get in with my wide-ended wooden sculpting tool, and I will simply make sure it's rounded, but I'm not shooting for an exact shape, not just yet. Now, just so you know, this is how much was left from that piece of clay, okay? I now take the front half, roll out an elongated worm. Worm is how you say it when you're trying to be funny. And I'm always trying to be funny. Now this worm does not have to be as small as was the worm rolled out for the lower lid. And I will begin by securing this to the front corner as well. Come up and around. I'm blending it to the top of the form eye socket as I go round. Down around to the rear. Okay, now this is how much is left off of this piece. Okay, just like so. I'm going to go ahead and smooth it with my finger. Now, as the clay dries out, and it will, you can use a little squirt bottle, or as we say in Brooklyn, a little squite, a little atomizer type squirt bottle to moisturize the clay. This clay is doing okay for right now. Eventually it will be moistened up a bit. Now, I'm going to pull up my photo references first. All right. With this as my guide, or one of my guides, I will model the eyes as per the photo. Very little white shows at the back of the eye. In fact, the limbus band, which is the wide, dark brown band at the rear corner of the eye, that really alleviates a lot of the white that shows. Now, to eliminate a lot of the white showing, I simply push forward on the clay at the rear edge of the eye. Now, to get the proper shape, I'm going to use my two wooden modeling tools. First, I'm going to use the acacia wood modeling tool that has the smaller rounded end. I'm going to push against the rear edge of the eye, like so, and use it to kind of trim away just a wee bit of clay. And now I'm going to push down at the bottom, like so. Whoops, don't jiggle around now. And now I will push forward on the clay again. And I will bring the attitude of the eye from that of a deer caught in the headlights to that of a alert yet relaxed animal. Now, I don't normally pre-model an eyelid ridge on the eye. I like to do that. I like to work that through the skin. Now I'm going to bring the front, as seen on TV, no, As seen in the photo, this high crest is the first, let's say, quarter of the eye is where that's located. So I'm going to bring my modeling tool up in that area, raise the front portion of the eye. All right. And I want to shape it. I want it to be close to the eye. I don't want it coming away too much from the eye. I don't want a shelf, basically, is what I'm saying. Now, just for the halibut and for the fun of it, I'm going to show you this is the medium whitetail deer eye setting tool. Mackenzie carries them, Van Dyke's carries them. This may have been purchased from either Research or Van Dyke's, I'm not sure which one. But let's see where the shape is here. We get the front corner, push it into place. I like to push up on the eye tool first, then down, like so. Now you can see where it's wanting me to remove clay. So with that, and you see my front's pretty well set. The front's pretty well set. The back here, it's saying to take a little more away. And that's cool. Because I do need to come down at the rear of the eye to get that dropping shape seen here at the rear third of the eye. So I drop this down a bit, shape it. Now I'm going to bring the clay forward again to close off the white. I don't want a lot of white showing at the rear, but I want just enough. Now you can see what the tool did. It exposed an awful lot of white at this front corner. That's because I've not yet put a little bit of brow muscle tissue there. That little bit that came off the rear of the bottom lid of the eye, the clay, I will draw this together a bit, roll it into a little ball, roll that out into a worm shape, a little thinner at the bottom than at the top, and I'm going to put that in place. That's a little dry. And give that a squirt of water. It's nothing special. It's a little atomizer bottle. You can get these at Sally's Beauty Supply. Give the clay a little squirt of water just to rehydrate it a touch. Roll it between the hands. Now we're going to place it like so at the front of the eye. Break it off about halfway up. And because it's nice and moist, we can manipulate it into place. Now, I won't give this little deer a very heavy brow. This was a mature buck, but he was a young buck. He was a young buck. So I'm going to rework this. I'm going to get in there with the tool again. I'm going to push this clay into place, like so. There we go. Now with the modeling tools, get in here and start modeling. The best modeling tool in the world is your finger. And you have 10 of them. Well, you have 4 plus 2 thumbs. I'm going to get in here now and do a little trimming away with the wooden modeling tool, sculpting tool, like so. Now, I'm going to give a little squirt to the entire eye structure at this point. There we go. If it looks like it's a little too wet, a little paper towel, tamp it dry. It can get a little too wet. You don't want it too wet. You don't want it to smear like mud. Now I will wet my finger, spray my finger with the water, tap it off on my apron, and go over the eye like so. You can also utilize a paintbrush at this point, and I will do that as well. Try to keep the eyes clean. I always try to keep my eyes clean. Now I've got a nice small brow for this small deer on this eye. And you can see the difference between the two sides at this point, where this eye looks so big in the eye socket. But once you begin to model, you lose that overage of size. Okay? And now we will bring this into shape. I'm going to get a brush. I'm going to use an angled stiff artist brush for this. And I'm going to wet that brush, just give it a little squirt with plain water. I'm going to come in and around. First thing I want to do is clean the eye with it, come in and fine tune the shape. Now, during the eye tuck method, all this beautiful clay work would be destroyed. You'd be lifting the clay away from the eyes and destroying all the work. With this method I'm using here, this harkens back to the early days where we would let the clay set for about an hour. Let it get pretty decently hard for about an hour. And this was before the days of critter clay, so the clay would start developing cracks, so you had to be careful. A lot of us would take paste that we laid up paper forms with, yes, a white type of paste. It's a type of white paste that kids like to eat in school. And we would coat over the eye with the paste. Something similar gets done today. Using the Pro One Premium paste that Paul Kales has put on the market, the clay work here is covered with the paste and allowed to stay 1 or 2 days without a problem. What I do, so that it doesn't fully harden out, I cover it with plastic after the paste begins to set. Now I can really fine-tune my clay work here. And I will continue to work it and smooth it until I get just the look I want. In the meantime, I will take some clay. This is the leftover from the top, the installation of the top brow. I'm going to take this, I'm going to roll this out a little thinner. It's still good and moist. It helps sometimes if you put these pieces of clay back in the plastic bag with the bulk of the critter clay. Now I rolled it out a little more, broke it like so. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little smaller roll of clay. I'm going to smear it over the opening of the lacrimal gland, and I'm going to push that into the lacrimal gland. That's going to give the skin an anchor when it's tucked deep inside. Okay? That's going to give the skin an anchor. Next, I take the longer piece, I lay it on like so. By the way, this is all I need as far as clay over the eyelids. Okay. I'm going to simply put this in place. Take modeling tool. Secure it to the inside of the lacrimal gland opening. And I'm going to come around, shape it with my fingers, like so. I'm going to come up to here, I'm going to cut it off and remove the excess clay. Now, this clay here at the bottom also gets pushed into the lacrimal gland opening. Again, these all become anchor points for that piece of anatomy. I now am going to spread it onto the head form. Some people do this, some people don't. I'm one of the ones that do. The fact that we are molding these things with solid fiberglass doesn't allow for a lot of more intricate type detail. A little spritz with water. Spread the water into the clay. And now I can refine the shape of what I've got here by removing some clay, digging some out, and leaving some in the opening. Just like that. I can remove some from the front here, smooth it. Now, this will be the basis of my eye clay work. That's it. I'm going to refine it off camera. I'm going to come back on. I'll have a still up of what I've done. I'm behind the deer form back here. I'm back here. I'm this away. I'm back here. I'm this away. I'm not here where the lens is, and I need to be right here looking at it. So I'll be back. Squirt of water on the brush. And let's refine this. Very nice. Yep, I can see that happening. Okay. I have a front view of the eye as well. Now, you have to imagine this with the skin on it. After a few years of doing this, you get a really, really good imagination. Let's put it that way. But the eyelid will be worked into the clay through the skin. There's no sense putting an eyelid into the skin right now. I'll tell you why. The skin itself tells the story where the eyelid should go, where the upper eyelid crease should go. You have to read the skin. The skin will let you know where it is. I could give this a very wide, thick upper brow. I pull the cape on, and it'll be incorrect for this size deer, for this particular individual animal. He may have a very small upper lid, okay? Now, the reason for this clay, you'll see once the deer gets mounted, this clay gets folded over after the skin is tucked. This part of the clay gets folded over so that the skin lays onto itself just as it shows in the actual photo of a live deer. That's not just tucked, that's actually a fold. It's hard to see sometimes, but in here you can see a little the roundness of it by the hair pattern. Okay, so also studying live deer helps. You put your hands on a live deer, it helps a whole lot. I'm going to go ahead and complete the second eye off camera, and when I come back, I'll coat it with paste and bag it. Again, here's the container of Pro 1 premium hide paste. Okay, this is what it looks like inside. It's a white, creamy paste. Almost looks like the kind of paste we used to eat when we were kids in school. And you could stir this up and make it thinner to apply with a brush. I like to apply it with my hands. I like the contact of my hand against the form with the paste, and I can tell I'm getting a nice even layer of paste. But here we go. That's what I'm using. And it is successful. It has been very successful. All right. I'm going to coat the clay work on the eyes now with the paste. Stir it up. Stirring it with my finger at this point, though. This is just the white paste. Paul Kale's Pro 1 Premium High Paste. Just going to put a layer of this, not a big goopy layer, just a nice even layer all over the clay. Let me get around this side here, make sure I'm getting it right. Whoop. Pardon, pardon, pardon. Pardon-moi. Yes, pardon-moi. Didn't know I could speak French, did you? I want to make sure I cover all the clay. That includes getting it down into the lacrimal gland opening, like so. Paul suggests wearing gloves. When I was younger, I took a header into a 55-gallon drum of pickle. Pickle made with sulfuric acid, salt, and aluminum sulfate. So I don't really worry too much about chemical reactions. There are very few chemical reactions that bother me anymore these days. Now, I want to clean it off the eye. I'm going to use my finger. And then I will use the brush with the water to clean the paste off the eye. I don't want the paste drying on the eye if I can avoid it. So I go like so. We get it off the glass eye as much as can be removed. Like so. Okay. Now I'm going to use the same brush to make sure that the paste gets into the lacrimal gland, and we'll see this closer up on the other eye. Excusez-moi. There's that French again. Okay, now here we go. Just going to go over this like so, and like so, around the clay. and beyond the clay onto the head form. A nice even layer. This will slow down the drying time of the clay quite a bit. This will seriously interfere with its drying time. And that's good, because using the method for eye setting I'm going to use, like I say, what's referred to nowadays as the lay method. Back in my day, it was just called setting the eyes, or just plain eye setting. Okay. I want a nice even layer. I don't want it bunched up anywhere. I don't want to create lumps with the paste. First thing I can do is take the wooden tool and actually remove it from the eyes like so, and then go over with the brush. And I return the unused clay into the clay pot, the container it came in. Again, we're going to clean the paste off the eyes using the brush and water, just plain water, not soapy water, just plain water. Now that is a little lump of dried paste I got on my finger from somewhere in the container. Wet brush, like so. Take it off the eyes. Most of it off the glass. Now I don't want to spray the eyes. I don't want to thin the glue. I don't want the glue to thin. I just want it off the glass. Now, again, I will push it into the lacrimal gland crease or cavity, whatever you want to call it. And then I can go around close with the paste around the perimeter of the eye. Wash it off. And the last bit to take off the glass eye, like so. And like so. Yeah, let's get a little more water on there. Like so. I'm going to let this set up for about an hour. Then I'm going to cover it with plastic and leave it overnight to set. Alright, it's been a couple of hours since I left the paste on the clay, and it has since dried real well. Before I cover him up, I'm going to clean off the glass eyes one more time. I'm going to use these makeup applicators. See, they have nice little pointed end on one side and a flat, kind of flattened spoon shape on the other. That is what they come in a little box, a little container like this. And again, this is another product you pick up at Sally's Beauty Supply, or any place where beauty supplies are regularly sold. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go in, and this time I'm going to use a little Windex. I'm going to spray it on the pointed tip of the makeup applicator, and I'm going to go ahead and clean the eyes. Nice thing about now is there's less chance of disturbing the clay because it's had a couple of hours setup time. Nice thing with these little pointed ends can get up where you want them to clean the eyes. The reason I'm using Windex is because the paste dried. The paste is dried, and the Windex will cut through the dried paste. It'll clean the glass really, really well. And then with the flat side, I just give it a little polish. Now I'm going to get around the front. Make sure this part of the glass eye is cleaned. And I'll repeat this on the other side before covering him with plastic. So here we go. Now I'll take a cloth. Take a little cotton cloth. And just give it a little buff. Okay, here we go. Just an ordinary clear plastic bag. Now that this is dried, nothing will stick to it, but I like to bring the bag around, make it tight enough so that he can't breathe anymore. Wrap it around and secure it. Now I don't put pins through bags. That's never a good idea. I want to wrap it down tight, and I'm going to secure this grouping of plastic here with a clamp. Little clamp, like so. Grab it and secure it. Now, this will allow the clay to stay somewhat moist under the plastic and under the hide paste. Tomorrow I'll come down, I'll put clay on the end of the nose, paste up the form, and mount this little buck. Until then, sayonara.